Hello everybody, it's Vertical Sandwich. So let's take a minute to just talk, before we start this review, let's take a minute to talk about the future of book reviews. Because, as as we've all noticed, or I've made a big deal of, we're almost done with Hugo Awards. I have the 2020 winner in the house. I haven't started it yet, but so we do have one more to add, kind of beyond the list to keep up with the list. It's called The Memory Called Empire, and it should be interesting. It's a Hugo Award winner, so I'm obligated to read it to continue this list. Now, when we run out of Hugo Award winners, I will just be doing other books. I will just be doing other books, mostly in the science fiction genre. So, I have other books, and if I run out of science fiction books, I'll start doing, classic works of literature I love. It would be interesting to talk about things like The Great Gatsby and Lolita. It would be very interesting to talk about, Ulysses. It would be very interesting to talk about. But I have a bunch of Vonnegut works that I would like to talk about. I have some other books. We have the Southern Reach trilogy. There's the other books in the ancillary series, and then I'll be getting into some other. I have some other stuff. I've started reading some Nebula Award winners, so we might start a Nebula list. I don't know. But book reviews aren't going to stop anytime soon, without a doubt. So that being said, this time it's Spin by Robert Charles Wilson, the winner in 2006. So, let's read the back cover. The time is the day after tomorrow, and three adolescents, Diane and Jason Lawton, twins, and their best friend, Tyler Dupree, are out stargazing. Thus they witness the erection of a planet-spanning shield around the globe, blocking out the universe. Spin chronicles the next 30-odd years in the lives of the trio, during which 300 billion years will pass outside the shield, thanks to an engineered time discontinuity. Jason, a genius, will invest his celibate life in unraveling cosmological mysteries. Tyler will become a doctor and act as our narrator, and as Jason's confidant, while nursing his unrequited love for Diane, who in turn plunges into religious fanaticism. Along the way, human-descended Martians will appear, bringing a drug that can elevate humans to the fourth state, an adulthood beyond adulthood. But will even this miracle be enough to save Earth? Here's a book that features speculative conceits as brash and thrilling as those found in any space opera, along with insights into the human condition as rich as those contained within any mainstream mimetic fiction, with both its conceits and insights beautifully embedded in crystalline prose. That's from the Washington Post, apparently. So, 450 pages. Take a look at the pages. There we go. Boom. That's what they look like. Those are the things. Those are the pages. Coming Age in Boiling Water. This is Chapter 2. People younger than me have asked me, why didn't you panic? Why didn't anyone panic? Why was there no looting, no rioting? Why did your generation acquiesce? Why did you all slide into the spin without even a murmur of protest? Sometimes I say, but terrible things did happen. Sometimes I say, but we didn't understand. And what could we have done about it? And sometimes I cite the parable of the frog. Drop a frog into boiling water, he'll jump out. Drop a frog into a pot of pleasantly warm water, stoke the fire slowly, and the frog will be dead before he knows there's a problem. By the way, that's not true. The frog will jump out regardless. The obliteration of the stars wasn't slow or subtle, but neither for most of us was it immediately disastrous. If you were an astronomer or a defense strategist, if you worked in telecommunications or aerospace, you probably spent the first few days of the spin in a state of abject terror. But if you drove a bus or flipped burgers, it was all more or less warm water. English language media called it the October event. It wasn't the spin until a few years later. And its first and most obvious effect was the wholesale destruction of the multi-billion-dollar orbital satellite industry. Losing satellites meant losing most relayed and all direct broadcast satellite television. It rendered the long-distance telephone system unreliable and GPS locators useless. It gutted the World Wide Web, made obsolete most of the most sophisticated modern military technology, curtailed global surveillance and reconnaissance, and forced local weathermen to draw isobars on maps of the continental United States rather than glide through CGI images rendered from weathersats. Repeated attempts to contact the International Space Station were uniformly unsuccessful. Commercial launches scheduled at Canaveral and Baikonur and Kourou were postponed indefinitely. It meant in the long run very bad news for GE Americom, AT&T, ComSat, and Hughes Communications, among many others. And many terrible things did happen as a consequence of that night, though most of them were obscured by media blackouts. News stories traveled like whispers, squeezed through transatlantic fiber optic cables rather than ricocheted through orbital space. It was almost a week before we learned that a Pakistani HAT-V missile, tipped with a nuclear warhead, launched by mistake or miscalculation in the confusing first moments of the event, had strayed off course and vaporized an agricultural valley in the Hindu Kush. It was the first nuclear device detonated in war since 1945. And tragic as that event was, given the global paranoia ignited by the loss of telecommunications, we were lucky it only happened once. According to some reports, we nearly lost Tehran, Tel Aviv, and Pyongyang. Now, yeah. So what happens is one night these three kids are out stargazing and the stars go out. And it turns out that the Earth has been put into a giant globe. Time outside of the globe. They actually pretty quickly realize that they can launch crafts outside of the globe. And those crafts come back instantaneously, and the people out there think that they've been out there for, weeks. So the way it works is the time outside travels at, they figure it out, and it's crazy. It's this crazy, it's like every second ends up being 30 years or something. I mean, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And so then over the course of these people growing up and stuff, billions of years are changing outside. And then eventually, somehow the thing gets disrupted and they can see what's happening to the sun. And like in 300 billion years, our sun starts to do things like change color and get bigger. And it gets really, it's terrifying. And at one point, what they decide to do is they go, oh, well, time's really flying fast out there. Here's what we'll do, is if we send people to Mars, those people will have millions of years to work on the problem, and we'll get the answer almost instantaneously. So they do that. And those people, they speciate, right? Like, over millions of years, human beings, I don't know what that was on my forehead. Human beings become a separate thing, right? Like, they still look human. That I know what that is. That is definitely a mosquito. They still look human. They're shorter. They're drought resistant because there's not a lot of water on Mars, and they've obviously developed to a different environment than the one that we live in. And those people do. One of them comes back and has kind of their years worth of, their thousands of years worth of research in form of these kind of medications and stuff to change humanity. And then, and the world becomes very strangely lawless because at the rate time is passing, humanity only has about a lifetime, right? Like, at some point, the sun, the surface of the sun expands past the orbit of the planet. Like, this is a thing. This is a thing that we assume about the evolution of stars, right? From what we know about how stars should evolve, eventually the sun expands to the point where it encompasses where our planet is. And because its gravitational pull doesn't change, we don't move. We don't get the luxury of moving away from the expanding surface of the sun. It's just going to eat Earth eventually. If you leave this solar system for billions of years and then come back, what you will find is a big inflated sun that and Earth will be cooking inside of it. I mean, Earth will have been broken down to its component subatomic parts because that's how a sun works. The sun is composed of just the most basic kind of. Anyway, enough about physics and things. So people are starting to, people have to think twice about doing things like having children because their grandchildren will not live to, there won't be an Earth for their grandchildren to live on at the rate at which time is accelerating outside of the spin. And, something has done this, and, there's no communication. No alien species says, oh, by the way, we're walling you off for a reason. It just happens. And so humanity kind of has to go with that. And they do. I mean, the one of the characters becomes part of this government agency that is trying to kind of understand and subvert this thing so that humanity can survive. And The other one does, he becomes a physician, and then the third does kind of fall into, because obviously the spin itself, the globe itself, is evidence of some sort of higher power. So it's humans' nature to look for reason within that. And so religions form based around what's happening to people and whether or not it's the will of a god, or whether or not they're extraterrestrials who have a purpose. And the book actually concludes very well. I will say that. I hated it. Reading the back cover, I hated the idea of having to read this book. I went, that sounds dumb. It reads pretty well. I mean, it's I would say that this is an upper mid-range Hugo Award winner, right? Like, this is not a kind of poignantly Stranger in a Strange Land, or it's not Dune. It's not like the Broken Earth trilogy. But it's not Down Below Station. It's not The Big Time. Like, it actually has believable characters, and kind of leaves you with more questions, like leaves you with a bunch of unanswered questions, but does resolve what's happening to these characters. Like, at the end, there is some type of solution. I'm going to say it that way, because I don't want to tell you what happened. But, so yeah, it doesn't just kind of like go like, and then the sun like eats the earth and nobody knows why. Like, that's not the way it is. So, and it does, like I said, it leaves you with some questions. It's well written. I like the characters, and the plot wasn't, I don't regret reading it. I didn't, I don't want my time back spent reading it. It's well written. It's a solid quality piece of science fiction like this. So, would I suggest you read it? Yeah, if this is your thing, like, if you really love, science fiction books, and you've heard of Spin and you've never read it, or you're thinking about reading Spin, or you're interested in Hugo Award winners and you wonder about this one, it's good. It didn't take my breath away. I didn't read it and go, oh man, this is going to be so influential. I mean, I really think it's just a solid work. Like, it comes in as out of the, on the list, it's going to come in as like a B-. Right, that's where I'm gonna put it. Is like, among Hugo Award winners, a B-. Among science fiction in general, it's good. It's a quality piece. Like, you would read another book by this guy if you were just like, I'm looking for a book to read. I liked Spin. You could take this to a doctor's office and sit in the waiting room, still trying to get. It's probably the same mosquito. You would take this to a doctor's office and like read it in the waiting room, and time would pass pretty fast, and it would be ironic because of the nature of the plot line. There you go. Books are like the Spin. Like, take that. So, that'll be it for this week, and when we come back, I only have 2 more Hugo Award winners sitting down here, so next week it's either The Forever Peace or To Your Scattered Bodies Go. So I'll see you for that. Bye, everybody.